Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Hastings, part of the Rogers Lake Authority. Tonight, primary part of our agenda is a presentation on invasive aquatic weeds by Greg Bugsy and Summer Weidman from the Office of Aquatic Invasive Species. And it's helpful to keep our lake free of invasives.
Okay. Thank you. It's nice to be here. I remember we were here, I think it was maybe 2022. Gave us a talk. I remember it was a very nice group to talk to, and I'm sure you guys are the same. So the way it's going to work today, first of all, I lead the invasive aquatic plant program and also the new Office of Aquatic Invasive Species at the Ag Station. Just as a little background, 2 years ago or so, state legislature mandated that the agricultural station have what's called the Office of Aquatic Invasive Species. And this was sort of it developed from the invasive aquatic plant program we had done for years and years. And when the legislature looked around at the various state agencies that could best house this office, they felt that the agricultural station was best. And we were very happy to take on that responsibility. It allowed us to bring on three employees with the funding, Summer, which was a soft money position. Prior to that, she was strictly on grants, so we never knew when they were going to run out. She's now a full-time state employee, and we have a PhD and another technician working with us. So I'm going to talk about, this is going to be a two-part workshop, if you will. I'm going to give introductory remarks about aquatic plants, aquatic weeds in the state. I'm going to go very quickly to, I think, a very important topic for you, and that is our discovery of what's called hydrilla in the Connecticut River. And I really want to talk about this because this is extremely important. I'm going to show some pictures of just how bad this is, and you are very close to the Connecticut River. And when I looked around at lakes that I would suspect would have this plant may have moved to, probably on boats, your lake came up as ground zero, and we're going to talk about whether we found it there or not. Let's see here. So again, as many of you know, we do research on invasive aquatic plants, water chemistry in lakes, management of aquatic plants, and all that. And we've done some surveys of lakes, including your lake. We actually surveyed, I think it's up to over 450 actual surveys of like 250 different lakes in the state, and it's all up on our webpage. So we do these very detailed surveys going out determining what's in the lakes, and then we do these detailed maps using geographic information systems to show people what is where and how things are changing over time if we do multiple surveys. We have a lot of information online now, and we have a new what's called web app, which you can go to if you go to our the Office of Aquatic Invasive Species website. You can get this app, which is really sophisticated. You can hover over the state, you can find your lake or anybody else's, and get a lot of information of what's going on there. Now, again, these just a very couple basic slides. Probably you've heard this multiple times from our talks, but maybe somebody's new. And, why are we worried about invasive aquatic plants? Well, we're worried about them for two reasons: the ecosystem impacts and the economic impacts. The ecosystem impacts could mean they change the ecosystem so certain species can no longer exist, the fish, the plants, or something like that, which can be very harmful. For instance, in the Connecticut River, where this hydrilla is showing up, it is replacing what's called eelgrass. And eelgrass is a very important plant for small fish, menhaden, which is a very important fish for the ocean. And there could be severe impacts on that. Where we get most of our concern is when there's some sort of economic impact. People can no longer swim, they can't boat, maybe the fishing is no longer any good, and their property values go down, which is well known. You have a weedy lake, property values tend to go down. You see it all the time, the really nice lakes. You go to Basin Lake, look at the houses around that lake, and some of these really clear, clean lakes. And then you go to some of the lakes, that are less desirable, and the houses are taken care of, and that sort of thing in many instances. So, there's lower property values, tax revenue. You don't really find interference with navigation too much in Connecticut, but there's certainly the costs involved in managing these invasive aquatic plants is huge. Typically, to treat an acre of aquatic weed, it's going to be $1,000 plus. So you can think about that, and it can be a lot more than that. So, but with that being said, aquatic plants are important, so you don't want to get rid of everything. And some of the techniques that are being used today can do that. So, there's food and habitat for wildlife. They can improve water quality, stabilize sediment, remove nutrients, and reduce algal blooms. And native plants can help resist invasion from invasive species to an extent, but it's not perfect by any means. The Connecticut DEP suggests 20 to 40% of what we call the littoral zone, which is that zone where light can reach the bottom along the shore usually, have some sort of aquatic plants. All right, we're going to talk about how do these invasive aquatic plants get here. They can get here through a lot of ways. Many of them have to do with what people do, whether it's boating, water gardening, aquariums. Most of the plants that are invasive species in Connecticut were at one point an aquarium plant. People get tired of aquariums and they feel the right thing to do is to dump them in the lake, set everything free, and a lot of the problems have occurred because of that. So in Connecticut, I mentioned that we've done 400 and some surveys and of 64 lakes. So we've done 72 resurveys, including 2 surveys of Rogers Lake, which I'll mention in a minute. 60% of the lakes have one or more invasive aquatic plants in Connecticut. And this is way, way higher than would be, say, in Vermont or Maine or the northern New England states. Connecticut is considered, I think, the gateway to New England of invasive aquatic plants. So if they can be stopped here, that's going to help other states. We have a web page, and you can find our surveys of Rogers Lake on our web page. You can see here that we've done 2 surveys, one in 2006 and another one in 2021. I know you've had other surveys by private agencies as well. If we look at what we found in our 2 surveys, and again, there's a big difference between 2006 and 2021, and I believe that you started herbicide treatments in around 2017. And what's most notable is in 2006, there was a lot of bloom here. This is the variable water milfoil. And in 2021, it was pretty much gone, and showing the herbicide treatment are effective. We also showed that we did not have a major decline in total species of aquatic plants. We've done 31 in 2006, and then 35 with a few more actually in 2021. We still found some variable milfoil in 2021, and we found 2 other invasive curly ponyweed and what's called Phragmites, which I don't think we probably looked for in 2006. Phragmites is a plant that's along the shore from and sometime, I think we started actually surveying for it a little later than 2006, so I don't think I would count that. And the curly pondweed issue that we found here Our surveys occurred in mid-July, and that particular plant tends to die out around then naturally. So my guess is it was still there in 2006, but we didn't pick it up because it probably had died out naturally. All right, so let's talk about hydrilla in the Connecticut River. I don't know how many of you know Connecticut River, but this is an area called Selden Cove. And if we, this is just a little video showing the cove. This is all hydrilla. And Summer's going to go over how to identify it. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of that. But this is a plant which we discovered in the Connecticut River. We did genetics on it, and it was found to be a totally different, genetically different, I should say, than any other type of hydrilla that was been found in North America. And some research has been done, and appears to have come from either basically Eurasia, either the Korea area or Lithuania, kind of far apart. But there's some record of it there. But this is the first time it's found in North America, and you can see how dense it can be. So this is the other important thing. All right, it's in the river. We found it in like 2016, 17, 18. That was when it really determined what it was. And we didn't find it anyplace else until 2023, where it turned up in East Twin Lake. Where did it turn up in East Twin Lake? Right at the boat launch ramp. What was unique about the boat launch ramp is that there was bass tournaments that were in the river, and then a week or so later, they went to East Twin Lake. And that's how we really feel this got introduced back far away into that lake. So now, all right, we know it's in a lake. So that's not good. In June of 23, it was found in Lake Pocono-Pog, followed by Middlebolton Lake, Meacher Pond in Middletown, Amos Lake in Preston, Congamog, Basin Lake in East Haddam, Gardner Lake, and Patchogue Pond in Griswold, and then Holbrook Pond. Anyways, so now all of a sudden it's now known to be in 10 different lakes. Obviously, of note for you, Rogers Lake is not mentioned. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So movement by watercraft is a big issue, where lakes that have been found to have it, we notify community to make it up these signs. This lake contains hydrilla, wash your boats, make sure you clean, drain, and dry, and all that good stuff. Some lakes, such as Gardner Lake here, has started an inspection program. All boats are inspected before they're launched to make sure they're not containing any invasive things. Good question. I believe Gardner, is that deep, Summer, or is that private?
Gardner Lake.
Not sure. I think it, sometimes the lake associations pay for it, sometimes state DEP does it. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to check it, whether it's state or whether it's, I have a funny feeling it might be the Gardner Lake Association paying for that. But just to show you, here, this is a boat launch ramp coming out of the Connecticut River to Deep River, the Deep River Canal Ramp. All this is hydrilla. All this is hydrilla. It's come off the boats as it's come out of the river. So you can see the vast amount of plants that are coming out of the boat launch ramp. And if you're not really cleaning things, and you go to a lake, you're going to have a problem. Now, the other issue we're concerned about is seaplanes. Are there any seaplanes that land in Rogers Lake?
No, right?
All right, so you don't have to worry about that. There is at least one seaplane school right by the Gelston House there in East Adam that takes off from the river and practices their landing in the lakes. And you can have all sorts of fragments of seaplanes on rudders and that sort of thing, and it can be put into the lakes that way. So we're concerned about that. We're not sure what to do about it. The FAA really has no rules. I was surprised that seaplanes don't even need to have a flight plan. I mean, no one knows where they can go wherever they want. And I know some of them do fly up to Maine for the weekend. Let's just go over a few lakes here quickly, where we're finding this plant. So 2023, hydrilla was found right off the Beaufort to Eden's Lake. And this is the only place we found it. We surveyed the following year. It was found here, here, and here, so it's on the move around the lake. Gardner Lake, state boat launch is here. Toby Hill is out the hydrilla. You can find a little there. You can see looking like there at this point, like brilliant fixation. And this here is a cold here, shallow, mucky cold. Taking off. Patchogue Pond, we survey that every year. That group, and last year was the first year we found it. State boat launch ramp is here. And all these orange dots are sightings of hydrilla, the triple lines of the boat path. And that's the only place we can find it is in that little cone by the state boat launch ramp. They have a theory which they're trying to convince DEEP that they maybe put a ultra low stocking of grass carp in this lake, trying to use the preference of grass carp for hydrilla. It's like the #1 preferred plant. Some theory is maybe just a few of these fish will seek out the hydrilla and eat it. I'll be frank, DEEP does not like grass carp. They've been put in a number of lakes, including Lake Candlewood, and have decimated the plants to the point there's no plants left at all. And that's not good. So Lake Pocatapog found it, and they decided it was around the lake and all over it. It's probably been there a while. They decided to have what's called a take a rate to the lake day. And I went out there to see what was going on. This woman here with a float, and she's kind of raking. She's raking up hydrilla, putting some on the float, bringing it back to the wagon. Meanwhile, there's fragments of floating away. They did have a reward system. I think a $600 reward for the person with the most hydrilla. This person here is giving the thumbs up, got some bags of hydrilla, and bringing it in for weighing. This, I think, was good for publicizing the problem, but when we knew that there was hydrilla all over this lake, and this was really, if anything, probably making things worse, but they were gung-ho on this, and for we to tell them it's not a good idea. Station Lake. Now, this is an interesting one, is that we do surveys of this lake just about every year. And last year was the first time we found it at a dam area going to Moose Reservoir and around the state boat launch and in a deep area right here. This lake is one which has a number of seaplane landings as part of practicing from the river. So it could have come in on a boat trailer or fixing on a seaplane. But there was not a lot there, so we were able to pull it out by hand. This is just a little video of what we saw. This is in June. You can see the hydrilla here. This is that deep sections of the regular system. Not a lot, but enough. Went in there with the scuba gear, pulled it. This is how many plants we got. There's about 50 plants total pulled from that area. We're hopeful that that would really cut down on the population because it would, I personally tried to get the root small. This is the difficulty in getting any hand harvesting is getting the root system. So we went back in August. This is the hydraulic. I'll go back. Actually, more bigger than it was before. I don't know. I didn't get the roots or something, but it's real. And this has been shown by others that early hand harvesting patches like this are probably not going to be effective. With that being said, there's a lot going on to control this plant in the state through both the Ag Station and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We realized that this was, we did a survey of the river and we found there was close to 1,000 acres of this all the way up to Agawam, Massachusetts. So there's actually more than one state involved. And Navigable River. And we just felt that the Ag Station would be better, the state would be better served if we brought in something bigger than the Ag Station to take on this project. So we were able to get the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers involved through a number of state legislators who sort of petitioned that they get into the project. And so this is their third year now on the project. They've done treatments of Key Cove. This is what it looked like before. This is really, what you're seeing here is water chestnut. There's hydro in there as well. And this is a post-treatment look. Again, they're using herbicides, which so far have not been very controversial in the river, which we're happy to see. We really don't know another good option right now. But there's a number of sites that they're doing tests, and we're working with them up and down the river. I think there's going to be 5 sites this year, and there's monitoring going on, treatments of last year's sites. With that being said, some towns have at least one town has decided to take this in their own hands, and they actually treated Weathersfield Cove on their own. They hired a company to do it, and it was rather nice. Both with spray rig and injected some diclot into the Weathersfield Cove, and they had excellent control, much like you've had in Rogers Lake, where you put typically from the treatments from like 40 acres to 4 or something like that. So that's a good sign. So the state of Connecticut, through Connecticut Deep, gives out these AAS funds to do control work and to do research and that sort of thing. And we were given some funding to check out all 94 boat launch ramps in the state to see if they contain hydrilla. So we have 2 years to do it. We did 17 of the ramps last year. We found 4 detections. Only one of them was actually new. We actually knew the 4 of them were in areas we'd already been previously. We knew it was there. There was one new one. But interesting for you, we did Rogers Lake. We checked out the ramp. And we have to go within 100 yards radius of the ramp and look for hydrilla. We actually, with Rogers, we went considerably further than that. We used some discretion if we feel we can go a little further away. We did not find hydrilla in Rogers Lake.
Was that last summer?
That was last summer. We did notice that there was a lot of weed plant control due to the treatment of the coal around the coal launch ramp. And we think that's, in some other cases, the same thing. We think that's offering some protection from any kind of early infestation into the boat launch area. So that was very good news. We found none there. We do think that treatments of the boat launch area can go a long way to preventing it from getting established. So that's very good news. Just a couple new things. Have you applied for any Connecticut Deep grants for any of your work, or not yet? Not, I think you haven't.
No, we haven't.
Okay. Well, they gave out, I believe it was around $500,000 last year, 400 or something like that, in grants to various entities that were trying to manage invasive aquatic plants or potential zebra mussels and that sort of thing. The thing that's important to know about this year is that they can no longer take the money directly from the boat registration. So everybody last year registered a boat had to pay a $5, whatever it was, fee for aquatic invasive species grants. The federal government said you couldn't do that anymore. You can't put a fee on a boat registration. So now it is done through the Connecticut DEP sportsman licensing website. So in other words, if you get a fishing license or whatever, you can go there and also get a sticker or at least you can pay a fee and then have sort of be noted that you have paid the fee. So, but if you have to specifically go there to do it, you got to know to do it. It's not well publicized, and so I think that their funding is going to be decreased for the coming year. This is an interesting one. The Connecticut Ag Station is working with the Army Corps. The Army Corps is really taking this project seriously, Niagara River Hydrilla, and we've been working with them to get some of their funds to state entities in the state, whether it's a lake association or whatever, to get them some funding to do some work in managing plants. And we think we're going to be able to pull this off with the Corps. It's going to be a 50-50 match that will come from the federal government. It'll be run through the Ag Station. So this could be important. And what would it cover? Any kind of prevention and control, all invasive species, but hydrilla will be a priority, I think. And there could be herbicide treatments, there could be harvesting, benthic plague. It's all sorts of things. There's not going to be really a tight specification, I think, on where the money could be used. But the thing is, it's important to keep abreast of what's going on here. This is basically what we're, once this happens, there'll be a request for proposals, and the Ag Station will submit proposals to the Army Corps. We will probably have some ability to comment with you to put you in the best position to get the funding. If the Army Corps approves the projects for the funding, then CAS, our group, will create contracts and will funnel the money from the Army Corps.
So when you say this is 50%,
That means that the total cost of the project, you would be reimbursed 50%. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pay, say it's a $100,000 project, that you have to come up with $50,000 to get $50,000. You can use, and we do this all the time, what's called in-kind services as a means of offsetting some of your 50%. So, I don't know, say, you have a secretary or somebody doing some work. So it could be, say, a town could have a environmental person who has to do a lot of forms to fill out this, well, their time, which you're paying for anyway, could offset some of that funding. So again, we will be able to work with you with that. I don't want to go too long, so I'm going to turn it now over to Summer. And any questions quickly? I'll take questions at the end, but I don't want to bite into Summer's time if I don't have to. Well, the Corps wanted to test several herbicides. they tested Diclot, they tested what's called Cellacor, and they tested what's called Endothol, okay? 3 different ones. Diclot is what's called a contact herbicide that's super cheap. That's what they used in Weathersfield Cove. Really, really cheap. Cellacor, on the other hand, had to be used at the highest rate that the label would allow, because hydrilla was not that sensitive. It's an extremely expensive herbicide. Already, I think there was some number floating around that they treated like, I don't know, 85, 90 acres, and it cost $850,000. So obviously, if you can get some easy money, or something, that might be. But it seems like all the herbicides work well. The cheap ones, the expensive ones. This year, there's going to be work to see what kind of regrowth you get, because you don't control the root systems and this and that. Propagules, you just tread in water. You're going to be right back the same year. So that's what we're going to find out this year, whether there's a difference between some of the expensive ones and the less expensive ones when it comes to regrowth. What we're seeing from Weathersfield Cove is that the regrowth is very, very minimal. I think that you were using Diclot, I think, for your variable milfoil. Maybe something like Clipper for the fan wart. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. But variable water milfoil can be controlled very low rates of Cellacor, so it keeps the price more reasonable, unlike hydrilla. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Summer, and she's going to take it from here.
Yeah, there's plenty of time for questions at the end. Not a problem. All right, just a little about me. My name is Summer. I'm a technician. I have been working here. It's going to be like my 11th summer surveying lakes. I've been a full-time technician since 2018, but I was a seasonal before that. And while I do a lot of plant ID and lead boat surveys, that kind of thing, I also have my master's in GIS, and I'm currently getting my PhD part-time at UConn in remote sensing, trying to figure out how to use satellite imagery and drones to sort of make our survey work, a little bit more efficient, a little bit more effective, and something that can come just as we get free images from the satellites every 14 days. But now I'm going to teach you how to identify aquatic plants, because while hydrilla, yes, is the big bad one that we're all afraid of, there's also, 14 others in the state that we have to be aware of. And the sooner you identify it, the sooner we can control it, when it's a small population. So it's really important to know, just to recognize some of these big bad guys. And I can send you a PDF of the whole presentation. So don't worry about, trying to take pictures and that kind of stuff. I'll get you that tomorrow. So this blue book here is the Aquatic and Wetland Plants Guide of Pro and Health. That is for the nerds of the group that really want the natives and the invasives. They want every aquatic plant that's going to grow. That's what we use back in the lab when, we can't identify something. We'll go to that book. And then we have our guide. It's available online. It's just invasive plants, clams, mussels. And then we're making a new one that will be available, at cost. That's going to have fish, invasive fish, and all kinds of invasive aquatic related things. And it'll be in like a nice waterproof, little booklet that's more designed for like kayaks. So this is sort of a booklet. And so we're running low on copies. So I made some paper copies of the ones that are in Rogers Lake, and then hydrilla, water chestnut, the big players. So you'll at least have a paper version of what we have online. So I'm going to go through some plant terms just so you understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about what's different about all of these plants. So a fragment is a plant part that breaks off and grows to form a new plant. So you can imagine, you have hydrilla or fanwort, which is something you guys have in the lake. A boat mows through that patch of fanwort, breaks it all up in the froth into tiny little pieces. Each of those pieces is a fragment and can grow a new plant. So even a piece as small as an inch has about a 50% chance of sprouting roots. So this is why, things like harvesting become problems, and why it's just some of these plants that spread through fragmentation, it can be difficult to control without the use of an herbicide. Tubers are modified underground stems for starch storage. So the Monoecious hydrilla that we've had in the state for a long time has these tubers, and they're sort of like potatoes, but they grow under the ground, and then they can grow out in all directions. So it's really hard to manage for plants that have tubers because you can't see where the tubers are. And then turions are a modified leaf bud on a stem or shoot. So this picture here is a curly leaf pondweed turion. That's something you have in Rogers Lake. So curly leaf spreads mainly to these turions, these hard pine cone looking type things, and they fall off the plant into the sediment and then sort of act like seeds that can sprout the next year. So we have some leaf terms. We have the node, which is the point where leaves or branches attach to a stem. And then we have three different ways that leaves will grow on aquatic plants. We have opposite, which is from the node, you have two leaves that come off at the same point. We have alternate, which is one leaf per node. So you have one on the right side, the left side, the right side as you're going up the stem. And then you have whorl. So a whorl is three or more leaves at the same node, so it's sort of a little circle of leaves. And this is important, especially with hydrilla, which I'll go over in a minute, is counting the number of leaves per whorl, because there are some species that have 3, some that have 4, some that have 5. So it's really, really important to count how many leaves are in that whorl. One more term, and then we'll get into the plant fun stuff, because when it comes to school. So leaflet is one of the many leaf-like looking structures that when combined make one leaf. If you're looking at a leaf and you can't figure out, is this a leaflet or is this a leaf? I can't go to the stem, find the node. Everything coming off of that node is going to be the one leaf. So if that one leaf has a bunch of little parts, those will be leaflets. And then we have a petiole, which is the leaf stalk. So some plants have a petiole, some plants do not. Then we have a rosette, which is a cluster of leaves that surround the stem at the same point. Very similar to a whorl. However, it's only going to be at one part of the stem. It's only going to happen one time, and it's going to be a lot more than just 3 leaves. It's a real cluster, think of like a rose, a rosette. And then tooth or teeth are sharp points along the leaf margin that can help us identify between some natives and invasives of the same species. Sometimes you need a hand lens. Sometimes you can see it just with the naked eye. All right, the first one is one that you guys have. This is fanwort, Kabamba caroliniana. It was introduced to Connecticut in 1937. It's a submersed plant that can grow in about 3 to 10 feet of water, and it spreads through fragmentation. So some key features, it's bright green. I kind of think it looks like a pipe cleaner under the water. It's very bushy, very bright green. And it has these white solitary flowers that'll pop up from the surface. And then what's really important when identifying fanwort is the leaves are opposite, and they have long petioles. And then it's called fanwort because the leaves sort of fan out. So the leaves kind of look like, a fan that you would fan yourself with. And this is important, especially the petiole, because there is a protected species in Connecticut, Biden's Beckii water marigold, that looks very similar. It's a little darker green, but it has no petiole. So there's some lakes where both grow. Phantom Lake has both. And I literally have to pick both plants up in my and look for the petiole to see which one's which. So it can be, it's really important to take your time and look for those key characteristics. So I have a map of Rogers Lake from our 2021 survey. You guys have done treatments, so I'm sure this has shrunk in terms of treating fewer acres. But back when we were here, it was sort of scattered throughout the lake, a lot in the cove by the boat ramp, this northern cove here, just little spots. It seems like things are getting under control. And then now, how do we identify big bad hydrilla? So the first strain of hydrilla was introduced to Connecticut in 1989. That's the Monoecious hydrilla. It spreads through both hydrillas, spread through turions, tubers, fragmentation, literally everything you can think of. And it's commonly confused with our native water weed that we have in the state. So key features, this works for any hydrilla, no matter if you're dealing with the Connecticut River strain or the Monacia strain or the Dioicia strain that we have down south, like in Florida. So it's whorls of 5 or more leaves. Okay? It's a submersed plant, and it may have turions or tubers, but it's going to have these really vegetative reproductive structures, and that's primarily how it's going to spread. It also spreads through fragmentation, but especially the Connecticut River hydrilla, you're going to see a lot of the turions. But what's really important is the whorls of 5. Take anything away from my whole section, it's hydrillas, whorls of 5. So I have the 2 different strains that we have in Connecticut up here. Both are invasive, so if you see either of them, it's not good. But this Monacia hydrilla is now called wandering hydrilla, and then we have the Connecticut River strain, which is the northern hydrilla, and that's what Greg was spending all that time talking about. That's the new one that we found in 2016, and it's been spreading, to other water bodies. So we normally will send the hydrilla out for genetics just to confirm, but generally speaking, the Monacia hydrilla is going to be very strictly whorls of 5, where the Connecticut River is much more variable. You can find whorls of 5, 6, 8, 13. It's much more robust as well, as you can see from these 2 mounts. Connecticut River strain is extremely robust, and it has a lot of turions and doesn't have the same potato-like tubers that we're used to seeing with the Monacia hydrilla. It has the same, these turions here will grow underground and be a little white, but it's not the stem. It doesn't have, this ball here with the stem. It's still that very spiky looking turion. But like I said, they're both invasive, both bad, both hydrilla. So if you see any of them, let us know. Or if you see the native, let us know, and we'll double check. So commonly confused species, I have our native Elodea. So these 2 kinds, Elodea, we have Western waterweed and Canadian waterweed, and they have whorls of 3. These whorls here. And then we have Brazilian waterweed, which is whorls of 4, which is invasive, and then we have hydrilla whorls of 5. So if you see whorls of 3, you're in a pretty good spot. Anything more than that, and you should let us know. Some tips and tricks is the plants get pretty bushy towards the top, so you really want to go down the stem. You can even break the stem in half so you can get a clear view of the leaves. Because sometimes when it gets really bushy, you might think you see 4, and really if you go further down the stem, you'll see 3 leaves per whorl. But it's whatever what you see most consistently. Or send it to us. So variable leaf water milfoil is another one you guys are familiar with. Veratome heterophyllum is introduced to Connecticut in 1932. It is called variable because it has a variable appearance. I've seen it red, I've seen it green, I've seen it both. And it spreads through fragmentation. So where you're getting that propeller, chopping it up can become a real problem. Key features, the 6 flower spike, it'll have a red or green stem. The leaf has sort of a triangular shape, and the leaves are less than 1 inch apart. That's a 6 flower spike, and the leaves being really close together on the stem help you distinguish it from some of our other milfoils. So if you can, like in this picture, you can see the stem because the leaves aren't that robust, but you can see that there's nodes all along the stem. It's very, very tightly packed. So again, variable leaf water milfoil in 2021 in Rogers Lake. We had some up in the cove here, and some here. But I'd be curious to see, how the trees are going and how that's changed since then. 2021 feels like yesterday, but apparently it was quite a few years ago. Eurasian water milfoil, this is Myricillum spicatum. This looks very similar to variable, but it is different. So it was introduced to Connecticut in 1979. It is the most common invasive aquatic plant in Connecticut and the northern United States. So pretty much everyone from Wisconsin, Minnesota, New York, everybody knows milfoil. Everybody's dealing with it, and this is the one they have. And it also spreads through fragmentation. So some key features, it's going to have a much thinner flower spike than that variable. It has a rectangular leaf shape, and then the leaves are greater than an inch apart. So with Eurasian, you're going to see a lot of empty stems, whereas variable, the leaves are really, really thick. So I have them side by side. So we have Eurasian water milfoil, where you can see the stem because the leaves are very far apart, and it's got a thin flower spike. And then we have variable leaf water milfoil, where the stem is just full of leaves and it has a really thick flower spike. But just like with the hydrilla, these are both invasive, so find it, it's not good. Minor naiad is an invasive species. It's not normally controlled for because it is just generally not a nuisance. It was introduced to Connecticut in 2004. It's an annual and it sprouts from seeds. So some year you might see a bunch of it because all the seeds sprout. Other years it might look like nothing's there. It's very low growing, often found in shallow waters, which is why we don't normally have to control for it. You can see in this picture, it's just sort of bushy, low growing. It's only going to get about to, knee high. It's not going to interfere with boating and that kind of stuff. Some key features, it's compact with bushy and highly branched stems. The leaves are going to be very stiff and curled, and the teeth you'll see with the naked eye. So we have about 5 native naiads in the state, and their teeth are much smaller. It's much harder to see, and they're not as stiff. When you hold this in your hands, unfortunately, because it's an annual, we just have a mount of it today, so you can't feel it, but it is very brittle, and the leaves are extremely curled. Curly leaf pondweed, this is the last invasive aquatic you guys have in Rogers. Hopefully that stays that way. You don't get a hydrilla or anything else. It was introduced to Connecticut in 1943. It's another annual, so it sprouts from turions each year. The interesting thing about curly leaf, Greg mentioned this, is that it's fully grown in May, June, and then dies back midsummer. So normally a lake where we know there's curly leaf pondweed, we are going to survey next, because we're going to go see where all the curly leaf is, and then if we have time, we'll come back later in the summer where more things have had a chance to come to the surface, because you won't see curly leaf, so you'll just completely miss it. Sometimes it comes back in September, but for the most part, it's chock full of turions, by the end of June, dropping them, dying back, and just getting ready to come back for next year. Some key features. So I call it the lasagna plant because it has lasagna-like leaves. That's where it gets curly leaf pondweed. So the leaves look like lasagna noodles. The leaves are alternate and there's no petioles, so the leaf is going to clasp right up against the stem. And then I'll talk a bunch about these brown turions that are small, hardened pine cone type things. And so we were not here at prime time to survey for curly leaf. We were here in mid-July when we were here in 2021. But we did find it up by the boat ramp just a little bit. So we would have to come, earlier. We would have to come now if we were to really see where curly leaf was in the lake. Water chestnut. This is another one. I know we talk about hydrilla a lot, but you really don't want water chestnut either. You don't want any of them, but water chestnut is a real pain. So it was introduced to Connecticut in 1998. It is an annual, so it sprouts from these nutlets. And you may think an annual shouldn't be so bad because it's just going to sprout, and how many seeds could it possibly make? Well, one nutlet can grow 10 to 15 of these floating rosettes. That's classic rosette of water chestnut. Each rosette can produce 15 to 20 more of these nutlets. So one nutlet left to grow can make anywhere from 150 to 300 new nutlets. It's very, very good at growing and creating these nutlets and spreading. There's a lot of work on the Connecticut River. The Connecticut River Conservancy does a lot of water chestnut poles because since it's an annual, it's easy to mechanically harvest because it's not going to spread through fragmentation or anything like that. As soon as you break off that stem and you have that full plant, that plant then is done. So that is nice. It's very cathartic almost. So, just clear an area of water chestnut, and then you've made some progress. Key features of water chestnut, so it has the floating rosette, it has these waxy triangular leaves, and then submersed below the water, the leaves are feathery and sort of minuscule, not really anything like that big rosette. And then they're going to have these nutlets. So this picture here is underneath the rosette. This is rosette flipped over. These are where the nutlets grow. And then when they're hardened and drop into the sediment phase, they're very spiky. They can go straight through a shoe. So we have some other invasives to the state. They're just not that common. And honestly, how much can you learn in half an hour? So quick hitters, we have Brazilian waterlily, which we talked about before. That's world of 4. It has white flowers with 3 petals. We have European water clover, Marsilia quadrifolia. Looks like a four-leaf clover. There's really no other aquatic plant that looks like that. So if you see a four-leaf clover floating in your lake, probably the invasive Marsilia. Then we have another milfoil. This is parrot feather. It has a thick red stem and then these blue-green feathery leaves that come up out of the water. Then we have water hyacinth, Pontederia or Icornia, depending on how old your guide is, practice. So it's a free-floating with black feathery roots. It has these deflated petioles with a light purple flower. This is the only plant on this list that is not banned for sale in Connecticut. It's frequently used in water gardens because it does not overwinter. So the frost kills it. So people have to go every year and buy it, put it in their pond. However, down in Florida and the southern states, it can overwinter and it causes a huge problem. So it can double in size every 7 days during the growing season. So it can very quickly cover a water body if left unattended. Our new PhD, Jeremiah, he's from Florida, and he worked with bull water hyacinth, which was literally hip height. I mean, humongous. Taking out, clogging irrigation and drainage canals and causing all sorts of problems. Up here, doesn't overwinter, so it's not so much of a problem, but you still have to be wary of it because of how quickly it can grow if it gets into a large water body. We have American water lotus that has emergent white flowers with a seed head that sort of looks like the top of a watering can, or if anybody has a fear of all those holes, that's often what the seed head will look like. We have yellow floating heart, which is round heart-shaped floating leaves, and then this really, really bright yellow flower. These leaves are going to be much smaller than the water lilies that we're used to seeing, the Nymphea. And then we have Calitrichis stagnalis, the pond water starwort. That is a submerged plant with floating rosettes. It has spoon-shaped opposite leaves, but we normally have to get that genetically identified as stagnalis because there's a lot of different Calitrichis, and it's hard to tell the difference. These two are emerging invasives, so these are not on our list, but they're definitely things to be aware of. We have swollen bladderwort, Utricularia and blotto. We have found this in several lakes throughout the state. So it has alternate submerged leaves and then this large inflated floating leaf structure, these inflated petioles with a big yellow flower. There's a native that looks very similar but much smaller. So if you go and see something that's like a small donut, let us know. That's inflated like that. And then we have spiny naiad or Naias marina. This has not been found in Connecticut yet, but I believe it's maybe been found in New York, or New York's worried about it. It has brittle branch stems. It's sort of like that minor naiad I was talking about, but on steroids. It's much bigger, It's got conspicuous brownish prickly teeth. It sort of looks like a cactus in the water. So it doesn't look normal. You should notice that. But we haven't found it yet. So with that, I have most of the ones I talked about here. Depending on, it's 8:30 now, so I don't know if you want to do questions first and then look at the plants. Really, questions for Greg and myself. But definitely take the opportunity to play around with some of these live plants.
A couple questions. I believe at some point, we were told that our water chemistry won't support the water chestnut. Is that true, or is there?
I haven't, water chestnut's not in our study, right, Greg? It's normally like Eurasian water milfoil versus variable water milfoil or water chemistry, like alkalinity related, and minor naiad.
The alkaline.
Yeah.
I looked into that, and we just didn't have enough sites, with water chestnut, I think. Well, I've not seen anything, again, that, this is Rogers Lake, we determined that, sandworm and Bomba tend to occur together due to the North Sea water. Likewise, really but I have not seen anything.
Another question is, so were those, you got a picture where the weeds were brought up in the parking lot
Yes.
and baked.
Mm-hmm.
Those baked, if they got put back in the water, they'll propagate again, or?
You know, what does baked mean? I mean, if you put them in an oven for a long time, they wouldn't, but, you have to dehydrate them, and it depends when you purchase leaves and stems, dehydrate pretty quickly, probably won't reproduce. But if you have tubers and turions and maybe some seeds, seeds, you can dry seeds, and they'll be, you can plant them next year. So it's not perfect.
They don't, they, especially one day you're in one lake,
Right.
next day you're in another lake, probably wouldn't dry out that quick.
No, these clean drain dry studies have been surprising with how long a plant can be sort of dried out before, and it can still come back to life once it touches water. And there's also, it's both humidity can get trapped and things might not dry as well, where your boat meets your trailer and things. So there's like areas where plants can still sort of stay wet for a long time.
Like 8 wells.
Yeah.
We have a complete plant survey once a year. It sounds like it'd be prudent if we have frequent focus surveys, perhaps at the boat launch looking just for hydrilla. Does that sound prudent? And if so, how frequent and what time?
I would say, again, hydrilla doesn't usually get going until July. So July, August, September would be good times to be looking.
Another question, I guess I was out west, maybe Washington State, lake, and they had a boat launch machine where you could wash down your thing. Is that something that's does it work?
He talked about it. Think about to put in some sort of, what you'd like is some sort of steam cleaning, pressure, hot water, system. And that you need water, you need electricity, you need a lot of things. There's some systems which are being thought of for testing in Connecticut that really it's more blowing hot air and vacuum cleaning and using solar power. It's thought to be, somewhat effective, but not
solved, there's no silver bullet.
There are also areas where you can partner, like in other states, where you can partner with a car wash, and you can, like, get boat, if you wash your boat at, like the Poland self-serve car wash, and get a ticket, show that to the boat attendant, and shows that you cleaned. But that's a better access for that, high pressure water. That's really, because there's zebra mussels, all kinds of things you might not be able to see, that can still spread from water body to water body.
In the Adirondacks of New York, if you bring a boat in there, along the highway, there's boat wash stations, I believe they're manned. And, you have to go in there, get it washed, right? People know what they're doing, get a ticket, and then you can go wash it.
So does zebra mussels fall under your bailiwick, or?
There have not been anything really with zebra mussels other than, because when we do our surveys, we do water chemistry, we determine alkalinity and everything like that. We know zebra mussels need fairly high alkalinity. Our data can be used to kind of rule in and rule out potential sites. Do you have them now here? Okay, they're right here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you have the Asian clam?
We have Asian.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Asian, yeah. I'm sorry.
I'm surprised because the water chemistry wouldn't.
No.
Yeah, we see the Asian clams around, we don't see them being a nuisance that zebra mussels are, they don't stick to your crops.
Mentioned diclot to control hydrilla. I don't know if our ongoing permits include that. Do you know if we can get a permit to have on hand in case we need it for hydrilla, or do you know?
In Pond and Lake, you can add diclot to your permit, it's not gonna cost you a thing, just, you may apply to put diclot on there just in case it's needed, you don't have to do it.
That could be on the permit before we see it, it should be proactive.
Yeah. And DEEP is really being proactive when it comes to ways to manage hydrilla.
Yeah, and especially because you guys have state listed species, so there's like additional surveys and things that Pond and Lake knows about, and they take care of it.
They said that it was permitted to insert side.
Yeah.
For solid code, I didn't know if diclot. I think I have to go back and look.
Diclot, we looked at originally back when we started, and it's got a long life. And in fact, if you wanted to do dredging, we were told that the,
You have to check that.
getting rid
It
of,
doesn't seem to be providing, for diclot tends to be pretty breakdown product. There are other, yeah, I have heard that, I could be wrong. I've never heard that that could be an issue with visual impediment or something.
More questions, that's okay. I'm putting together a plan, for rapid response if we find, invasive species in certain areas. And do you know if other lakes are doing that as well? We can kind of compare notes, or is every association kind of doing that on their own?
Good idea. To have a plan for early detection and rapid response is kind of what you're talking about. This is talked about a lot.
Yeah.
But we're not.
Are you familiar with the Connecticut Federation of Lakes, CFL?
Yeah.
So they are sort of the go-to for like a coordinated rapid response
Right.
plan.
And ask them about that, and they're interested in that, but it's, it's on their list.
Yeah, yeah.
Brought that up as well. We don't want to start figuring that out once we see it. We want to
Of course,
get
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I mean, I think you're in a very good position to do rapid response. It's not like drill, I mean, contact with people, but it's here, I need a permit in 2 weeks, 5 o'clock. They would probably figure that out reason they can do it is because they already have a permit in place for you. You have your state listed species, all mapped and everything. So you're in a good position to, because of your previous permits and everything, to get a rapid response. But what CF Federation of Lakes is undertaking is they're trying to get the ability for any lake to have a rapid response, whether or not there's been, previous surveys. And what usually happens is they can say, well, if there's state listed species in the lake, well, we don't know, or maybe some historical record shows, and therefore you need to get a surveyor out, survey the whole lake from state listed species, and you can't get these people. Sometimes if you're lucky, depending on the time of year, you may not be able to get it done for the following year, and so I think that's one of the biggest issues, is how to deal with protection of state listed species quickly if you don't know where they are. That's just the big one.
So the surveys that you've done, like the 2023 survey, right, and then the earlier one, it's, if we needed documentation to support the thing,
Again, we are committed to helping you in any way we can as quickly as possible. Whether that means our staff coming out and doing some survey work, obviously right now we're somewhat limited, but there would be a possibility that you need to talk to DEEP, whatever they talk to us, can you get out there? And sometimes we've actually brought the people from DEEP, the state listed species experts, with us on a boat. Can you come out with us and take a look? And so we'll do everything we can to help, but we are right now fully booked for the whole summer with the surveys, and we got these 70 or 80 some more boat ramps.
You're optimistic about potential insect control?
Again, we have Dr. Foley with us, who is a biocontrol expert who's worked with this. Am I optimistic? Am I optimistic? Am I encouraging the work? Yes, because sometimes you get something good out of being not optimistic, but just pressing forward. He is working on some insects and looking at the potential of combining insects with herbicides and reduced herbicide usage. And that's all very important work. All this biocontrol work is important, but boy, scientists work a whole lifetime and don't ever get the biocontrol. Slow work. You've got to prove your biocontrol doesn't harm anything else. There's a lot to it.
We are fortunate that the Hydrilla fly that Dr. Foley is working with has already gone through that whole approval process. So what was happening was it just wasn't working down in Florida. They couldn't get the populations to establish, but they're hoping by having the Connecticut River Hydrilla, because the Connecticut River's tidal, so more Hydrilla is exposed sooner in the year, because Hydrilla generally doesn't peak growth until September. So you have Hydrilla that is exposed at the tide, so the flies can lay their eggs and get that population going a little bit more easily, a little bit quicker, and that we have a more favorable climate for this fly compared to its native habitat. There are some, again, optimistic is a strong word, but there are some things that lead it to be worth pursuing versus some others, but it's definitely integrative pest management. The goal is to reduce the Hydrilla so you can use less herbicides and that kind of stuff.
The grass carp, grass carp, are fish that can be introduced into lakes and ponds through state permit. They're strictly vegetarian. And they love Hydrilla. Boy, every time they've been used in the state, big destruction of fall plants. Yeah. Now, Candlewood, Candlewood Lake, the biggest lake in the state, they put 10,000 grass carp. For the first 7 years, not much happened. In the 8th year, the entire plant population collapsed. Natives, invasive, milfoil, we couldn't find day, we can't find it, basically. So, sure, that, but, and these are very concerned now. The lake water's never been clear, we do water testing, which is obviously, all that. Fishermen even haven't seen any decline in fishing, yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
It took 7 years for us to see the grass carp effect. It's probably going to take 7 years.
Well, there hasn't been a lot of complaining. Now, we got a call a couple of years ago from Connecticut Deep Fisheries saying, you mind coming out to Kentwood with us? We have to remove grass carp. So we got out there, they had a flotilla, their boats there, we had our boat. They had these electrofishing boats that herded grass carp theoretically into these big gill nets with a supported on hose. So they put there was 10,000 fish being produced, and that day I think we got like 10 fish out. I mean, it's huge. It was fairly big. It's interesting to see. We got one in our boat, and we were pulled up there, wrestling the thing, huge. We got it in the boat. Next thing you see, they have a hammer hitting it on the head. Yeah, they're something else. I mean, they initially don't think they're doing anything, but all of a sudden they reach a critical mass of, 8, how much they feed on them, ponds, Underwood Lake, Squats Pond, which is
Taunton Lake.
Taunton Lake. So, getting that perfect mix of just enough carp to pull what you want and leave what you want.
We will still, I wanted everyone to get up, look at the plants. You can still answer questions, but definitely want to make use of what we've got here.